All right, so you're ready to like really level up your English skills, but you also kind of want to, actually enjoy the process.
Yeah, who doesn't?
Exactly. Well, today we're diving deep into some awesome advice from actual language instructors who are like all about making learning English fit into your everyday life.
It's about going beyond the
Yeah.
textbook, tapping into how we actually learn best.
I love that. And they had so many cool ideas about using what they call native content, like think TV shows, movies, music, all that good stuff.
It makes sense, right? When we were kids, we learned by just being surrounded by language, not by memorizing grammar rules.
Totally. So how do we like recreate that as adults?
Easy. Pick a show or movie you actually enjoy, something you'd watch anyway,
Gotcha.
and start with subtitles in your own language. Then, as you get comfortable, switch to English subtitles.
Oh, that's clever. So you're kind of training your brain to connect the spoken word with, well, the written word.
Exactly.
I like it. Now, I know the instructors mentioned shows like Friends or The Office. Why those?
They're perfect for beginners. The language is super conversational, the situations are relatable, and they're full of phrases you'd actually use.
Like, what's up?
Huh?
Or hang on a sec. You know those little things that just make you sound more natural?
Yeah. They're like the glue that holds conversations together. They may seem small, but they make a huge difference.
Totally. Because let's be honest, confidence is key when you're speaking another language.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And this brings us to another amazing tool, music.
Music.
Music. It just engages your brain on so many levels,
Yeah.
You're listening to the lyrics, you're feeling the rhythm.
Yeah.
You're probably even singing along,
Yeah.
which is amazing for your pronunciation and intonation.
And it's fun. Who doesn't love belting out their favorite tunes? Even if you're not like the best singer, it helps you get used to making those English sounds.
For sure. Okay, so we've got shows, movies, music. What about podcasts?
Podcasts. I love podcasts.
Podcasts are great, especially if you want a bigger range of topics and accents.
True. There's literally a podcast for everything.
Exactly. You'll definitely find something that interests you.
And I bet there are tons of podcasts made for English learners too, right?
Of course, but don't limit yourself. Find podcasts on topics you're already passionate about, whether it's history, tech, true crime, whatever.
So smart. You're more likely to stick with it if you're actually enjoying the content. But what about vocabulary? That can feel kind of overwhelming.
Definitely, especially if you try to memorize those giant lists of words. Here's a game changer. Focus on learning phrases instead.
Phrases.
Phrases. Think about it. We don't communicate in single words, right? We use groups of words to express ideas.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So when you learn phrases, you're understanding how words work together, in context.
So instead of just knowing the word break, I learned how to say, take a break or bring a leg.
Exactly. It's way more practical. It gives you the tools to actually use the language.
Okay, this is making a lot of sense. But sometimes, don't we still need those like classic learning methods too?
You mean like flashcards?
Yes, flashcards. They kind of have a bad reputation for being old school,
Right.
but they can be super effective, right?
Especially when you combine them with those spaced repetition apps like Anki or Quizlet. They use algorithms to schedule your review sessions perfectly.
It's like having a personal vocab coach.
I know. And honestly, don't underestimate repetition, even if it feels boring. Those short daily review sessions can make a huge difference.
Okay, so we've got all these new words and phrases floating around in our heads. How do we make them stick?
Simple. Use them. As soon as you're comfy with a new word or phrase, find a way to use it. Write a sentence, say it out loud, maybe even work it into a conversation.
So like take those words out for a test drive.
Exactly. But what if you don't have anyone to practice with?
Good point.
Well, there's always the option of talking to yourself.
Wait, really? Like full-on conversations with myself in English?
Huh? Yeah. Think of it as your own personal language lab. No judgment, just practice. You can describe your day, practice phrases, even try something called shadowing.
Shadowing. What's that?
You listen to some English audio, pause it, and then repeat what you heard. Try to match the speaker's intonation and rhythm.
Oh, wow. So it's like you have this pronunciation coach right in your pocket.
Exactly. And you can do it anywhere, anytime, no pressure.
This is great advice. But honestly, sometimes the hardest part is just finding the motivation to practice.
Oh, for sure. Motivation can be tough. But here's the thing. You don't need to study for hours every day to make progress. Even short bursts of practice can be super effective.
So again, it's quality over quantity.
Yes. Instead of these long, overwhelming study sessions, just focus on small, manageable habits.
Like what?
Well, could it be 10 minutes reviewing flashcards on the bus, listening to a podcast while you cook, or even watching a short episode of your favorite English show before bed?
Those are all totally doable. But how do you stay motivated when you're not seeing big results right away?
One of the best strategies is to break down those big goals into smaller, achievable steps. Instead of saying, I want to be fluent, start with something like, I'm going to learn 5 new words this week, or I'll try using 1 new phrase in a conversation today.
So celebrate those small wins.
Yeah, it creates this positive cycle. Each small win motivates you to keep going. Oh, and don't forget to actually track your progress. Use a notebook, an app, whatever works for you. Seeing how far you've come can be super motivating, especially when you're feeling discouraged.
That's so true. Okay, so we've covered a lot. Immersing ourselves in native content, learning phrases instead of single words, using flashcards strategically, even talking to ourselves in English. What's the main takeaway?
I think it's all about making language learning an enjoyable part of your life. It shouldn't feel like a chore. Find ways to integrate it into things you already enjoy doing.
Yeah. Find that sweet spot where learning feels more like, fun and less like an obligation.
Exactly. And when you approach it that way, you're much more likely to stay motivated and reach your goals.
That's awesome. But I gotta ask, what about those times when you hit a wall? When you feel like you're just not progressing?
Oh, those moments happen to everyone. It's totally normal. The important thing is to remember that setbacks are not failures. They're just like signs that maybe you need to adjust your approach.
So how do you get past those roadblocks?
Sometimes you just need a break. Give yourself some space to recharge, then come back with fresh eyes. Other times you might need to try different resources or a new learning method, or even just connect with other learners for support.
So be adaptable, try new things, and don't be afraid to ask for help.
Exactly. Remember, you're not alone in this. There's a whole community of English learners out there who get it.
That's so reassuring. It's easy to feel isolated when you're struggling.
I know. But knowing that others have been there and made it through can make a world of difference.
Okay, I'm feeling inspired. What's one thing our listeners can do today to start using these tips?
That's a good question. Let me see. Oh, I know. Pick one activity we talked about today, like watching a show, listening to music, or even talking to yourself, and just commit to doing it in English for 15 minutes.
15 minutes. Totally doable.
Right. And the cool thing is once you start, you might find yourself wanting to do more.
That's the power of enjoying what you're doing.
Exactly. So set a timer, put on your favorite English content, and just dive in.
And have fun.
Yes, that's the most important part. Learning a language should be an adventure. It's really cool how much progress you can make when you change your mindset.
Yeah.
Like from, oh, I have to, hey, I want to.
It's true. When you're actually enjoying it, it's not a chore anymore. It's like this exciting journey.
Right. And speaking of journeys, let's do a quick recap. We talked about immersing yourself in that native content, learning phrases instead of just single words, and then actually using those words.
Oh, yeah. And we even busted that myth about flashcards being totally useless. Turns out they're pretty awesome when you combine them with those spaced repetition apps.
Totally.
Yeah.
And how about talking to yourself in English? Sounds a little crazy at first.
Definitely.
But it's such a good way to build confidence without, feeling self-conscious in front of others.
Yeah, it's like having your own little stage to practice on. But even with all these amazing tips, there's one thing that's super important: consistency.
You got it. It's the key to making real, lasting progress. But don't worry, it doesn't mean you have to study for hours every day.
So we're back to quality over quantity.
Exactly. Even short, focused practice sessions can be super effective, especially if you make them a regular habit.
So instead of trying to cram in a 2-hour study session once a week,
Yeah.
it's better to do maybe 15 minutes every day?
Exactly. It's kind of like exercise. It's better to go for a walk every day than to, run a marathon once a month and then collapse.
Makes sense. But honestly, life gets busy. How are we supposed to fit in language learning when we have work, family, you name it?
Well, think about those little pockets of time that we usually just waste, like your commute. Instead of mindlessly scrolling, you could listen to a podcast or review some flashcards.
Or how about while you're cooking dinner, put on an English cooking show?
There you go. Be creative. Find ways to sneak it into your day. And another thing, set realistic goals. Don't try to learn 1,000,000 words at once or master some crazy grammar rule overnight.
So break it down into smaller pieces.
Yes. Instead of saying, I'm going to be fluent in English, start with something like, okay, this week I'm learning 5 new words, or Today, I'm going to try using one new phrase in a real conversation.
So you're setting yourself up for success, right?
Exactly. Each small win keeps you motivated. And speaking of motivation, what about those times when you just hit a wall? You feel like you're not getting anywhere no matter what you do.
Ah, yes, that's the worst.
It happens to all of us, though. And it's super important to remember that setbacks aren't failures. They're just like opportunities to learn and maybe change things up a bit.
So how do you deal with those roadblocks? Any advice for people who are feeling stuck?
Well, first, you got to figure out what's causing the problem, right? Are you feeling overwhelmed by, like, how much there's to learn? Is there a specific grammar point that's tripping you up? Or are you just, like, lacking the motivation to actually practice?
Okay, so once you know what the issue is, you can start figuring out solutions.
Right. If you're feeling overwhelmed, maybe you just need to, scale back your goals a little bit. Or if there's a grammar point that's confusing you, maybe you need to find some different resources or explanations that make more sense. And if it's a motivation problem, well, that's where all those amazing tips we've been talking about come in.
So find those things that reignite your passion for learning, those things that make it feel fun again.
Exactly. And hey, remember, you're not alone in this journey. There are so many English learners out there going through the exact same things.
It can feel so lonely when you're struggling.
It totally can. But knowing that others have been there, faced challenges, and still succeeded, well, that can be super inspiring.
Absolutely. So where can people find this supportive community, connect with other learners?
Oh, there are tons of places online. Forums, social media groups, even language exchange apps. It's such a great way to swap tips, practice your English, and just get that extra boost of motivation.
It sounds like building a support system is just as important as like learning grammar rules and all that stuff.
Definitely. Learning a language is tough, but it's so rewarding. And having people to share that journey with makes all the difference.
So true. Okay, we've covered so much in this deep dive. But before we wrap up this part, I want to go back to something you said earlier, celebrating those small victories. Why is that so important?
Well, our brains love rewards.
Yeah.
Right? When we achieve something, even something small, our brain gets this little hit of dopamine. And that makes us want to keep going, to achieve more.
So it's not just about feeling good in the moment. It's actually like training our brains for success in the long run.
Exactly. And those small victories in language learning could be anything, really. Mastering a grammar point, having a conversation with a native speaker.
Or finally understanding like one line of your favorite English song.
Yes. Every little step forward is worth celebrating. It's a reminder that you're making progress, that you can do this, and that you're getting closer to your goals.
I love that. It's so easy to get caught up in the big picture and forget to appreciate those little wins along the way.
Totally. But those little wins are what keep us going.
For sure. So the next time you achieve something in your language learning, no matter how small it seems, take a moment to acknowledge it, give yourself a pat on the back.
You earned it. You're putting in the work, you're moving forward, you're getting closer to your dreams.
Love it.
And that's definitely worth celebrating.
Wow, we've covered so much ground in this deep dive. I'm feeling pretty energized, like I could go conquer the English language right now.
That's exactly the feeling we're going for. It's not about like just memorizing stuff. It's about opening yourself up to, new experiences and different ways of seeing the world.
And having fun while you're doing it, even when it's like, tough.
Totally.
Yeah.
Remember, we all hit roadblocks. It's how you handle them that matters.
So true. And speaking of journeys, I think it's important to remember as we wrap things up that you're the one in control of your learning experience.
Yes. You get to choose the materials, the methods, the pace, everything.
You can create a learning environment that's perfect for you, something that's both effective and enjoyable.
And don't forget about building a support system. Find people who will encourage you and celebrate your wins with you.
So take charge. Experiment, explore, try new things. Don't be afraid to find what works best for you.
Because the best approach is the one you're actually excited about, the one that makes you want to keep learning.
Right. And remember, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Some days you'll make huge progress, and other days it might feel slow.
But keep moving forward, even if it's just a tiny step. You'll get there eventually.
Be patient. Celebrate those victories and never lose sight of your goals.
Okay, before we finish up, I want to leave you with a question to think about.
A good one, right? The kind that makes you think even after the episode's over.
So we've talked about a ton of tips and strategies today.
From those immersive experiences to, really nailing those tricky sounds.
So here's the question. What's one small change you can make today to incorporate more English into your life?
Maybe it's watching one episode of a show with English subtitles, listening to a song on your way to work, or even just practicing a few phrases out loud.
Just do something. Take action. Even a small step can make a difference.
Because those little things can lead to big results.
So what will your first step be?
We'd love to hear about your progress. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of English learning. Keep practicing, and we'll see you next time.